In the quiet little town of Willow Creek, where everyone knew each other by name and life moved at a slow, predictable pace, two brothers lived together in a modest house on Maple Street. Ethan, the older one, was the kind of guy who always thought things through before making any decision. He had a steady job fixing cars at the local garage and liked to keep his feet firmly planted on the ground. His younger brother Noah couldn't have been more different. Always full of energy and ideas, Noah loved adventure, even if it sometimes landed him in trouble. But despite their differences, the two shared an unbreakable bond. They joked around, argued over silly things, and supported each other no matter what. One rainy afternoon, as they sat sipping coffee at their favorite booth in the old diner downtown, something caught Noah's eye. It was a crumpled flyer stuck under the salt shaker. Curious, he picked it up and read aloud. "Abandoned shed for sale. Just $500. The words jumped off the page like a challenge neither of them could ignore. $500? That's practically free. Noah exclaimed, his eyes lighting up with excitement. We should totally check this out. Ethan raised an eyebrow, skeptical as usual. A shed? What are we going to do with a shed? Noah shrugged, grinning mischievously. I don't know yet, but think about it, cheap real estate. We could fix it up, turn it into some sort of workshop or storage space, or maybe even rent it out. Come on, Ethan. When's the last time we did something exciting? Ethan sighed, knowing deep down that Noah wasn't going to let this go. Besides, $500 wasn't much to lose if the place turned out to be useless. Fine, he said finally, giving in. Let's go take a look. The next morning, armed with nothing but curiosity and a vague sense of hope, the brothers drove out to the address listed on the flyer. The property was tucked away on the outskirts of town, far from the main roads and surrounded by thick woods. When they arrived, they found themselves staring at what looked like the saddest excuse for a building either of them had ever seen. The shed was small, leaning slightly to one side, its wooden walls warped and gray with age. Paint peeled off in long strips, and the roof sagged so badly it seemed ready to collapse at any moment. Tall weeds grew wild all around it, swallowing the structure whole. Well, Noah said cheerfully, clapping his hands together, this is, rustic. Ethan crossed his arms and frowned. Rustic? This is falling apart. I'm starting to think this was a waste of time. But before they could leave, an elderly woman appeared from behind the trees. She introduced herself as Mrs. Hargrove, the owner of the shed. Her hair was silver, her face lined with wrinkles, and she carried herself with a quiet dignity that made both brothers feel oddly respectful. She explained how the shed had been in her family for generations, but had fallen into disrepair after her father passed away years ago. Now she just wanted to sell it and move on. It's not much, she admitted, gesturing toward the dilapidated structure. But it's sturdy enough to stand another decade or longer if someone puts in the work. Noah nodded eagerly, already imagining all the possibilities. Don't worry, ma'am, we've got big plans for this place. Mrs. Hargrove gave him a long, measured look, as though trying to decide whether to say something. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and serious. That shed holds more than wood and nails, boys. Be careful what you find inside. Her words sent a chill down Ethan's spine, but Noah laughed it off. Sounds like you're trying to scare. U.S., Mrs. Hargrove. Don't worry, we'll handle whatever comes our way. With that, the deal was sealed. The brothers handed over the cash, shook hands with the elderly woman, and officially became the proud owners of the most rundown shed in Willow Creek. As they drove back home, Noah couldn't stop talking about their new purchase. Can you believe it, Ethan? For $500, we just bought ourselves a blank canvas. Who knows what we'll uncover once we start cleaning it up? Ethan didn't share Noah's enthusiasm. Something about Mrs. Hargroves. Warning lingered in his mind, gnawing at him like an itch he couldn't scratch. Still, he kept quiet. After all, they'd made the decision together, and now there was no turning back. When they returned to the shed later that day, buckets and tools in hand, they got to work clearing out the mess. Dust filled the air as they hauled out broken furniture, piles of rotting leaves, and cobweb-covered junk. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. That's when they started hearing it, the faint creaking noise, almost like footsteps, echoing softly from within the shed. At first, Ethan tried to brush it off. Probably just the wind, he muttered, though he didn't sound convinced. Noah, however, was fascinated. Or maybe it's ghosts, he teased, wiggling his fingers dramatically. Oh, spooky. Ethan rolled his eyes. Yeah, sure. Ghosts love abandoned sheds, apparently. But as the sound grew louder and more distinct, even Noah stopped. Joking around. The creaks weren't random. They seemed deliberate, as if someone or something was moving inside. Unable to resist, Noah grabbed a flashlight and stepped cautiously toward the shed. Ethan followed reluctantly, muttering under his breath about how this was a terrible idea. Inside, the air felt colder, heavier somehow. The beam of the flashlight danced across the walls, revealing jagged cracks and splintered wood. Then, near the back wall, they spotted a trapdoor partially hidden beneath a pile of debris. It looked ancient, its iron handle rusted and stiff. Noah knelt down and pried it open, revealing a set of rickety stairs leading into darkness. You're not seriously thinking about going down there, are you? Ethan asked, his voice tinged with unease. Noah grinned, undeterred. Of course I am. Aren't you curious? Before Ethan could argue further, Noah descended the steps, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. Reluctantly, Ethan followed, his heart pounding in his chest. At the bottom, they found themselves in a cramped basement that smelled of damp earth and decay. Old tools hung rusting on the walls, and stacks of yellowed newspapers lay scattered across the floor. But one object stood out among the clutter: a locked metal chest tucked away in the corner. The chest was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Its surface was covered in strange carvings, intricate symbols that neither brother recognized. It looked ancient, out of place in the otherwise ordinary surroundings. Intrigued, Noah reached out to touch it, but Ethan grabbed his arm. We don't know what that is, Ethan warned. Maybe we shouldn't mess with it. But Noah was too excited to listen. Relax, Ethan. How bad can it be? Let's take it home and figure it out later. Against Ethan's better judgment, they lugged the heavy chest back to their truck and headed home, unaware of the mysteries and dangers it held. Little did they know, this discovery would set them on a path they could never have imagined, testing their courage, their bond, and their very sanity.
The drive back home was quiet, the kind of silence that settles between two people when they're both lost in thought. Ethan sat stiffly in the passenger seat, glancing at the metal chest resting on the truck's floorboard. He couldn't shake the feeling that something about it was off. The symbols carved into its surface seemed to stare back at him, almost mocking his unease. Noah, on the other hand, was practically buzzing with excitement. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and every now and then, he glanced down at the chest and grinned like a kid who just found buried treasure. Can you believe this? Noah finally broke the silence, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. A locked chest hidden under an old shed. This is like something out of a movie. Ethan didn't share his brother's excitement. Yeah, or something out of a horror story. He muttered under his breath, we don't even know what's inside. For all we know, it could be dangerous. Noah rolled his eyes but kept his tone light. Dangerous? Come on, Ethan. It's probably just some old junk, old coins, maybe a diary, or some random trinkets from whoever owned the place before us. Relax, will you? Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he stared out the window, watching as the trees blurred past. He wanted to believe Noah was right, that this was nothing more than a harmless curiosity. But deep down, he couldn't shake the memory of Mrs. Hargrave's warning, asterisk, that shed holds more than wood and nails. Asterisk, her words echoed in his mind, gnawing at him like a persistent itch. When they got home, they set the chest on the dining table, its weight making the legs creak slightly. The room felt smaller somehow, as if the chest demanded attention, sucking up all the air around it. Noah grabbed a chair and sat down, already pulling out his phone to search for the symbols. Online. Ethan hovered nearby, arms crossed, still unsure whether they should even open the thing. Okay, let's see what we've got here, Noah said, zooming in on the carvings with his phone's camera. After a few minutes of scrolling through websites and forums, his face lit up. Got it? These symbols, they're from some secret society that used to operate around here decades ago. Apparently, they were into alchemy and weird experiments. Ethan frowned. Alchemy? Like turning lead into gold? Noah nodded, clearly enjoying himself. Exactly. And get this, they weren't just trying to make money. Some people think they were messing around with potions and elixirs, stuff that could supposedly give people superhuman abilities. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Superhuman abilities? You mean like comic book stuff? Come on, Noah, this isn't science fiction. Noah shrugged. Hey, I'm just telling you what I read. Maybe they didn't succeed, but who knows? Either way, this chest has to have something cool inside. Let's open it. Ethan hesitated. What if it's booby-trapped or something? Or worse, what if whatever's inside is dangerous? Noah waved him off. Relax, Ethan. People don't go around booby-trapping chests. Besides, we'll be careful. Despite his reservations, Ethan didn't argue further. They spent the next hour trying different ways to unlock the chest, testing combinations, and even attempting to pry it open with tools from the garage. Finally, after borrowing a neighbor's lock-picking kit and lying about why they needed it, they managed to crack the lock. The sound of the tumblers clicking into place sent a jolt of anticipation and dread. Through both of them slowly, Noah lifted the lid, revealing the contents inside. At first glance, it seemed disappointingly ordinary. A leather-bound journal, a small glass vial filled with a shimmering liquid, and a folded map covered in cryptic symbols. But as they examined each item more closely, the reality of what they'd stumbled upon began to sink in. The journal was written in a mix of handwriting styles, some neat and precise, others frantic and scrawled as though the writer had been in a hurry. Flipping through the pages, they discovered detailed notes about experiments involving the liquid in the vial. According to the entries, the substance was supposed to enhance physical and mental capabilities, but at a cost. Side effects ranged from vivid hallucinations to complete loss of control over one's actions. One passage stood out, written in bold letters near the end, asterisk, do not use without antidote. Asterisk. Ethan closed the journal quickly, his face pale. This doesn't sound good, Noah. If these guys were messing around with something this dangerous, maybe we shouldn't mess with it either. But Noah wasn't listening. He was staring at the vial, his eyes wide with fascination. Think about it, Ethan. What if this actually works? Imagine being stronger, faster, smarter, everything we've ever wanted. We could change our lives forever. Ethan shook his head firmly. Are you kidding me? Did you not read that part about losing control? This thing sounds like a recipe for disaster. Noah sighed, frustrated. You're always so cautious. Ethan, sometimes you have to take risks to get ahead. Look where playing it safe has gotten us a dead-end job fixing cars and barely scraping by. Don't you want more for us? The question hung in the air between them, heavy and unspoken. Ethan didn't answer. He knew Noah had a point. Life hadn't exactly been kind to either of them. But he also knew that shortcuts often came with strings-attached strings that could pull too tight and snap before they could argue further. Noah picked up the map. Unfolding it revealed a series of markings and symbols similar to those on the chest in the corner. Someone had scribbled a name, Dr. Alaric Graves. Below it, a note read, asterisk, seek him for answers. Asterisk, who's Dr. Graves? Noah asked, Holding the map up to the light, Ethan shrugged. No idea. But whoever he was, he seems important. Maybe he created this stuff or figured out how to stop it. Noah grinned, his earlier frustration melting away. Then I guess we've got ourselves a mystery to solve. Let's find this guy, or at least someone who knows about him. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but the look of determination on Noah's face stopped him. He realized then that no matter what he said, Noah wouldn't back down. And truthfully, despite his fears, part of him was curious too. What secrets did the vial hold? Could it really do what the journal claimed? And most importantly, who was Dr. Allard Graves? As the night wore on, the brothers pored over the map, tracing possible locations and brainstorming ideas. Sleep eluded them, their minds racing with possibilities. By morning, they'd agreed on one thing: they needed answers, and they weren't going to find them sitting at home. Little did they know, their decision to dig deeper would set off a chain of events neither of them could have predicted. The vial's shimmering liquid seemed almost alive, pulsing faintly in the dim light, as if waiting for the moment it would be unleashed. And somewhere in the shadows, unseen forces stirred, awakened by the brothers' discovery. By the time morning rolled around, the brothers were exhausted but buzzing with adrenaline. The journal, the vial, and the map had taken over their thoughts completely. Neither of them had gotten much sleep. Ethan tossing and turning as his mind replayed every warning from the journal, while Noah lay awake imagining all the possibilities the shimmering liquid could bring. They sat at the kitchen table again, bleary-eyed but determined, staring at the items spread out before them like pieces of a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. So, Noah said, breaking the silence, "We need to find this Dr. Graves guy, or at least someone who knows about him. Where do we start?" Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. He wasn't thrilled about chasing down some mysterious doctor tied to a dangerous experiment, but he knew there was no talking Noah out of it. "Well," he said slowly, "the map's got symbols on it. Maybe they match landmarks or something around town. If we can figure out where those places are, we might get closer to finding answers." Noah nodded, already pulling up the map on his phone to zoom in on the details. "Yeah, good idea. Let's grab breakfast and head out. We'll check these spots one by one." The first location marked on the map turned out to be an old library downtown. It was a grand building with towering stone columns and stained glass windows that cast colorful patterns on the floor inside. The librarian, a kind elderly woman with glasses perched on the tip of her nose, greeted them warmly when they walked in. She seemed genuinely interested in helping once they explained what they were looking for. "You mentioned Dr. Allard Graves," she asked thoughtfully, tapping her chin. "I remember hearing stories about him. He lived here decades ago back, when Willow Creek was still growing. People said he was brilliant but strange. Kept to himself most of the time. Strange how," Ethan pressed, leaning forward slightly. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Ways." The librarian adjusted her glasses, her expression thoughtful but cautious. "Strange how," Ethan repeated, leaning forward slightly, his curiosity piqued. "Well," she began slowly, "Dr. Graves was known for being a bit of a recluse. He spent most of his time holed up in his house on the edge of town, working on experiments no one really understood. Some people whispered that he dabbled in things best left alone: alchemy, strange potions, even darker practices." She paused, glancing at them as if gauging their reaction. There were rumors about him trying to create something that could change human nature itself. But then, one day, he just disappeared. No one ever saw him again. Noah's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's it. That has to be connected to what we found in the chest. Whatever he was working on must have been stored in that shed." Ethan frowned, his unease growing. "Or maybe abandoned because it was too dangerous," he muttered under his breath. The librarian nodded gravely. "Whatever it was, it wasn't good." After he vanished, people started talking about strange happenings around town, unexplained noises, animals acting strangely, even reports of people seeing shadowy figures in the woods near his old house. It got so bad that some folks refused to go out after dark for months. "Do you know where his house is?" Noah asked eagerly. already pulling out his phone to jot down notes. "It's still standing," the librarian replied, "though I wouldn't recommend going there. The place is falling apart, and, well, let's just say it hasn't exactly been welcoming since Dr. Graves left. If you're serious about this, though, you might want to talk to Mrs. Hargrove. She's lived here longer than anyone else and might know more." Back in the truck, the brothers debated their next move. Noah was all for heading straight to Dr. Graves' house, convinced they'd find answers there. Ethan, however, argued they should speak to Mrs. Hargrove first. "She warned us about the shed for a reason," he pointed out. "If anyone knows what we're dealing with, it's her." Reluctantly, Noah agreed, and they drove back to the address they'd visited days earlier. Mrs. Hargrove greeted them with a knowing look, as if she'd been expecting them. When they showed her the journal and explained what they'd learned, her face grew pale. "I told you boys to be careful," she said softly, shaking her head. Dr. Graves was brilliant, yes, but also reckless. He believed he could unlock secrets beyond human understanding and paid the price. "That elixir you found, it's not a gift, it's a curse. Anyone who uses it risks losing themselves completely." Noah shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the vial tucked safely in his pocket. "Is there any way to stop it? Like, if someone were to use it, could they reverse the effects?" Mrs. Hargrove hesitated before answering. "There's an antidote, a rare herb called moonshade root. It grows deep in the forest, near the ruins of an old church. But beware, the journey won't be easy. The forest is treacherous, especially at night, and once you take the elixir, time becomes your enemy. The longer you wait, the harder it is to undo its effects." Ethan looked at Noah sharply. "Wait, what do you mean if someone were to use it? You didn't know." Noah interrupted quickly, though his guilty expression told a different story. "I haven't touched it, I swear. But we need to prepare for anything, right?" Ethan narrowed his eyes but decided to let it drop for now. Turning back to Mrs. Hargrove, he asked, "How will we recognize this herb? And are there any dangers we should watch out for?" She described the plant in detail: silvery leaves that shimmer faintly in moonlight, small purple flowers, and a sweet yet metallic scent. "As for dangers," she added grimly, "the forest has its own way of testing those who enter. Stay alert, stick together, and don't stray from the path," with directions in hand. The brothers packed supplies and set off toward the forest. Late that afternoon, the sun dipped lower in the sky as they drove, casting long shadows across the winding road. By the time they reached the trailhead, twilight had settled over the landscape, painting everything in shades of gray and gold. "This feels like a bad idea," Ethan muttered, adjusting the strap of his backpack. "We're walking into the woods at dusk to hunt for a magical herb. This isn't normal, Noah." Noah grinned, though there was a hint of nervousness in his voice. "When has normal ever helped us? Besides, we've come this far. We can't quit now." The trail led them deeper into the forest, the air growing cooler and heavier with each step. Towering trees blocked out most of the fading sunlight, their gnarled branches twisting overhead like skeletal fingers. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made Ethan jump, his imagination running wild. After nearly an hour of hiking, they spotted the ruins of the old church through the trees. Its stone walls were crumbling, half covered in moss and ivy, and the roof had long since collapsed. A chill ran down Ethan's spine as they approached. It felt like stepping into another world, one untouched by time. "There," Noah whispered suddenly, pointing to a cluster of plants growing near the base of the church's altar. Sure enough, the silvery leaves and purple flowers matched Mrs. Hargrove's description perfectly. But as they moved closer, a low growl echoed through the clearing. From the shadows emerged a pair of glowing eyes, followed by the sleek form of a large wolf. It stood between them and the herbs, its teeth bared in a menacing snarl. "Stay calm," Ethan murmured, holding up his hands. "Don't make any sudden moves." Noah froze, his heart pounding. For a moment, it seemed like the wolf might attack, but then, inexplicably, it stepped aside, retreating into the darkness as silently as it had appeared. "What just happened?" Noah whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Ethan admitted, "but let's grab the herb and get out of here." They carefully harvested the moonshade root, stuffing it into a small pouch. As they turned to leave, the forest seemed to close in around them, the shadows darker and denser than before. Every step felt heavier, as if the woods themselves were resisting their departure. Finally, after what felt like hours, they stumbled back onto the main trail, gasping for breath. The sight of their truck parked at the edge of the forest had never been more welcome. Back home, they spread the herb on the table alongside the vial and journal. Despite their exhaustion, neither brother could relax. They had what they needed to counteract the elixir, but the question remained, would they actually have to use it? Noah avoided Ethan's gaze, guilt written all over his face. Finally, unable to bear the silence any longer, he confessed, "I took a sip of it last night." He admitted quietly, "Just a tiny drop. I wanted to see if it worked." Ethan stared at him, his jaw clenched tight. "Are you insane? Do you even realize how reckless that was?" "I know, okay? I'm sorry," Noah snapped, his voice cracking. "But it did work, at least at first. I felt stronger, faster, like nothing could stop me. But then, things started changing. I hear voices sometimes, see things that aren't there. It's getting worse, Ethan. That's why we had to find the antidote." For a moment, Ethan didn't respond. Then, exhaling deeply, he said, "All right, let's fix this together," using instructions scrawled in the margins of the journal. They prepared the antidote, mixing crushed moonshade root with water and a few drops of the elixir itself. The resulting liquid shimmered faintly, almost hypnotic in its beauty. "Drink it," Ethan urged, handing the cup to Noah. "All of it." Noah hesitated, staring at the concoction. For a fleeting second, he wondered if he could live with the power the elixir offered, even if it came at a cost. But looking at Ethan, seeing the worry etched on his brother's face, he knew he couldn't risk losing himself or their bond. Taking a deep breath, Noah drank it down in one gulp. Almost immediately, he felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. His vision blurred, and his knees buckled, forcing him to sit. Ethan knelt beside him, gripping his shoulders tightly. "Stay with me," Ethan said firmly. "You're gonna be fine." Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Slowly, the haze lifted, leaving Noah feeling drained but clear-headed. The oppressive weight that had been building inside him was gone. "You okay?" Ethan asked finally, his voice softening. Noah nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "Yeah, thanks to you." Later that night, as they sat in silence, the events of the past few days were played in their minds. They'd faced danger, temptation, and fear, but they'd also rediscovered the strength of their bond. Together, they sealed the chest, hiding it away where it could never harm anyone again. Life returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such an adventure. The brothers vowed to approach the future with caution, grateful for the second chance they'd been given. And though they never spoke of the elixir again, they carried its lessons with them always. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, and true strength lies not in power, but in the connections we share with others. The days that followed were quiet to quiet, almost unnervingly so. After the chaos of their adventure in the forest and the harrowing experience with the elixir, life seemed to settle into an eerie calm. The brothers went back to their routines. Ethan returned to fixing cars at the garage, while Noah picked up odd jobs around town. But beneath the surface, things weren't quite the same. Noah couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. He'd catch glimpses of shadows moving out of the corner of his eye, or hear faint whispers when no one else was around. At first, he thought it was just lingering effects from the elixir, but as time passed, the sensations grew stronger instead of fading. It was as if whatever had been awakened inside him during those brief moments of power hadn't fully disappeared. Ethan noticed the change too. His younger brother, once full of boundless energy and jokes, now seemed distant and distracted. There were nights when Noah would sit by the window, staring out into the darkness for hours without saying a word. When Ethan tried to talk to him about it, Noah brushed it off, insisting he was fine. But Ethan knew better. He could see the cracks forming beneath the surface. One evening, after another long day at work, Ethan found Noah pacing nervously in the living room. I can't stop thinking about it, Noah admitted finally. Breaking the silence. What if the antidote didn't work completely? What if part of that stuff is still inside me? Ethan sighed, setting down his coffee mug. You're overthinking this, Noah. We did everything Mrs. Hargrove told us to do. You're not hearing voices anymore, right? No hallucinations. Noah hesitated before shaking his head. Not exactly, but I feel different. Like there's something waiting, just below the surface. Ethan frowned, his protective instincts kicking in. Then we'll figure it out, together. Whatever happens, we'll handle it like we always do, determined to get answers. They decided to pay Mrs. Hargrove another visit. She welcomed them warmly but looked concerned when they explained Noah's lingering symptoms. The elixir leaves traces, she said gravely. Even with the antidote, some remnants may remain. They might fade with time or they might grow stronger if provoked. What does that mean? Ethan asked sharply, his voice tinged with panic. Is there anything else we can do? Mrs. Hargrove nodded slowly. There's one last step ritual to cleanse any remaining influence. But it must be performed at the source, the shed where you found the chest. Noah groaned, running a hand through his hair. Great. Back to that creepy old shed. It's the only way. Mrs. Hargrove insisted. But be warned, the ritual requires both of you. If either of you falters, it won't work. That night, armed with candles, herbs, and instructions scribbled on a piece of paper, the brothers returned to the abandoned shed. The familiar creaks and groans greeted them as they approached, the structure looking even more decrepit than before. Inside, the air felt heavy, thick with an almost tangible sense of unease. Following Mrs. Hargrove's directions, they arranged the candles in a circle and placed bundles of dried herbs at each cardinal point. As Noah lit the final candle, the flame flickered erratically, casting strange shadows across the walls. Ethan glanced at his brother, silently urging him to stay focused. All right, Noah muttered, clutching the paper tightly. Let's get this over with. They began reciting the incantation, their voices overlapping awkwardly at first, but gradually falling into rhythm. The words felt foreign, ancient, and speaking them aloud sent shivers down their spines. As they continued, the temperature in the shed dropped sharply, and the shadows seemed to twist and writhe unnaturally. Suddenly, Noah froze, his eyes wide with terror. Do you feel that? He whispered hoarsely. Ethan nodded, though his jaw was clenched tight. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with every passing second. It wasn't coming from outside, it was emanating from within the very walls of the shed. Then, without warning, the trapdoor beneath their feet burst open, sending a gust of icy wind swirling around them. From the darkness below emerged a shapeless mass, writhing and pulsating like smoke given form. It hovered between them, its presence suffocating, as if feeding off their fear. Noah stumbled backward, nearly knocking over one of the candles. Keep going, Ethan shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Don't stop. Summoning every ounce of courage, they resumed chanting, louder this time, their voices steady despite the terror gripping their hearts. Slowly, the shadowy figure began to shrink, retreating inch by inch until it vanished entirely. The candles flared brightly for a moment, then extinguished themselves, plunging the shed into darkness. For several seconds, neither brother moved. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, echoing in the sudden silence. Finally, Noah broke the tension with a shaky laugh. Well, that was intense. Ethan let out a relieved chuckle, clapping his brother on the shoulder. Yeah, let's never do that again. In the weeks that followed, life truly began to return to normal. The strange sensations Noah had been experiencing faded completely, leaving him feeling lighter and freer than he had in months. The bond between the brothers grew stronger, forged anew by the trials they'd faced together. They sealed the shed permanently, nailing boards across the door and scattering salt along the perimeter as Mrs. Hargrove had instructed. Though they occasionally joked about turning it into a storage space someday, deep down, they both knew it was best left alone. As autumn settled over Willow Creek, painting the trees in shades of gold and crimson, the brothers sat on their porch. One evening, sipping coffee and watching the sun dip below the horizon. Neither of them spoke for a long time, content simply to enjoy the peace, you know? Noah said finally, breaking the silence, "I think we dodged a bullet with that whole elixir thing." Ethan smirked, raising his mug and mock toast. "Here's to bad decisions we'll never make again." They laughed, the sound carrying softly into the cool night air. Despite everything they'd been through, they were grateful not just for surviving, but for having each other. Life might throw challenges their way, but as long as they faced them together, they knew they could overcome anything. And so, the two brothers closed this chapter of their lives, ready to move forward with newfound wisdom and appreciation for the simple joys of everyday existence. Whatever adventures lay ahead, they would face them side by side, proving once again that true strength lies not in power, but in connection.